welcome to YouthLINE Live. This February 17th, 2015, we're going to be focusing on robotics. Actually, I'm sorry. We're going to be focusing on procrastination. My name is Aviva Lebo, and I'll be your host for today's show. And this is Nicholas Colonnese, which will be our guest for today's show. He is a current PhD candidate at Stanford University, focusing on engineering.
That's right. Thank you.
Sorry for the mix-up. So today we're going to be focusing on procrastination. So chances are either you or somebody that you know currently procrastinates. According to the lead researcher on procrastination, Dr. Joseph Ferrari, who has been doing many papers on procrastination, more than 20% of Americans currently self-identify with being a chronic procrastinator. So I guess we're going to go ahead and pick our current expert, as you say, on time management, Mr. Nick Colonnese's head. For those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, feel free to call in the phone number at the bottom of the screen. But before we go into procrastination, what it means to the majority of us at home, what would you say procrastination means to you?
So I think I wouldn't know if I was an expert by any means.
Okay.
But I would say that most of us deal with procrastination all the time. And it's that, we have certain things that we have to do, and then for whatever reason, we just can't get ourselves to do it. And it's very interesting. Like, why do we do that in general? And so I think it's more of a human condition thing that we all are in.
That's true. So a lot of people procrastinate for many different reasons, and according to a paper that is titled "The Epidemic: Procrastination," procrastination plays a role in many aspects of one's life, from health to everyday relationships to education. So being that you have already gone through middle school, high school, undergrad, or now a professional, would you say that you were somebody who either identified with procrastination at any point in your life, or were you the latter?
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting question to ask. Is procrastination something that we're born with, or as we get older, do we develop those habits? It's a very classic nature or nurture kind of thing. And I am like most people, I think. When I was growing up, I was a huge procrastinator. And so I would only do homework or assignments or chores or something the second before they were due. And I even remember, a lot of people were like this in high school. I would finish the homework that I had for the next period in the previous period. And so it was really stressful, but it was also kind of exhilarating.
So, being somebody that can definitely relate to that, what would you do at home, like the night before? Let's say you knew in the back of your mind that you had this paper due or this assignment due. What would you be doing at home the night before?
Well, so I think I just wouldn't worry about it and say, okay, I'll worry about it tomorrow. And I would, hang out with my sister or something.
Okay, and that brings up a very important point. So a lot of people think that procrastinators are just people that have issues with time recollection or managing time. But the fact of the matter is that people with procrastination don't necessarily have an altered sense of time, but rather a more optimistic approach where they're more optimistic about the time they have, or they may tell themselves that tomorrow, for example, they'll be more likely to want to work on that assignment or have more energy available, which is kind of funny. So you knew that you would have this assignment that would be due the next day at whatever time, but you would leave it off.
You definitely know people in your circle who are always late to things, and you also know the people that are like always there, like on time. And I think that in my mind, I actually imagine those as
different
not
people.
Necessarily the same person. I mean, although they certainly can be. So I think it goes deeper than that. But I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to... Perhaps the research article asked that same question.
Yeah, and so they actually did, which was kind of funny. But they had said that you were actually more likely to be late to things, as well as more likely to abuse substances if you are a chronic procrastinator than those who are not. So with regards to your own personal life, so you mentioned you were a procrastinator when you were in high school.
Yeah.
So currently you're a professional at one of the leading schools in the country, especially with regards to robotics and engineering.
Sure.
Do you feel as though these habits have continued, or what have you done?
No, I've definitely gotten better.
Okay.
I don't think I could afford to procrastinate like I used to when I was much younger. And it was a slow progression for me, I think. It was really bad in high school, and in undergrad, kind of learning the hard way, I got a lot better at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in graduate school, I don't procrastinate at all anymore, just because I feel like I have less stress in my life because of it, and I just don't have to. So it's definitely something that, like...
So was it like night versus day? Like at the minute you got into grad school, you were conscious about
No, it was a slow transition.
Okay.
But it was one that I certainly had to work on. And it's still something that I know that I have to put in effort these days. And I likely, when I go to the next stage of my career, I'll still have to do it.
So that's an interesting point. So obviously, once you got into grad school, it's not like you had any less responsibilities than you may have had as a teenager or, somebody in undergrad. I'm assuming the workload became more intense.
Yeah.
So what are some tips you might have? So obviously, you went from one area of life where you had X amount of responsibilities to another where you had potentially more. So how are you able to stay on track and have enough hours in the day for everything without procrastinating?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I suppose we're concentrating more on like the academic parts of procrastination, but I still think that's a good model, and it's the same kind of techniques are applicable to the whole region. But I do things, I think my big tip is I find places that are completely distraction free.
Okay.
So when it's time for me to really do something, I will go away from my friends and coworkers. I'll put my phone down. I put my phone on silent, and I will dedicate time towards accomplishing some discrete goal. And I feel like that alone, just setting aside some time where I know that I have to do something, is incredibly efficient, productive time. And so I tell younger students, that's my secret. I say, don't try to do work at your desk because you'll get people and they always, you get asked questions, you want help with something, you get bored.
There are distractions available on your computer. So you made up a very, very good point. So let's say you have tons and tons of assignments due, so you lock yourself up into some room where you won't have any distractions, you turn your phone off. Now, do you feel as though you're procrastinating with regards to keeping tabs with your family or friends or anything that you may value in your life? So how do you have a good balance between ensuring that all your tasks are accomplished? And
the hope is that you choose some time to address all those things.
Okay.
So the name of the game is trying to be as efficient with your time as possible, and then you can fit in the most stuff. I mean, when push comes to shove, usually you have to do something, but there's probably someone out there who's a much better procrastination avoider than me. Okay. And I'd imagine
that you seem to get a lot of things done. So if you don't mind sharing with our audience, I mean, you have some hobbies outside of school, obviously.
Yeah, that's true. So I like swimming and I like basketball quite a bit. Okay. And I also got a motorcycle around a year ago, which has been great fun. Mm-hmm. And I'm also incredibly into dogs. So I don't have a dog myself, but I take care of my friends' dogs a lot. And that's really fun, too.
Fantastic. So you mentioned a couple of things that you engage in, extracurricular activities. Some of them were recreational sports. Some of them were involving, relationships with people or dogs or animals. So that seems to be a good way or a good outlet for you to relieve steam or stress, because obviously having an immense workload can be stressful, especially when you want to ensure that you're being very productive and using time the most efficiently. So actually studies have shown that being a habitual procrastinator may lead to a steady decline in your health. You end up, overexerting stress, which is not good for you emotionally or healthy, because often you may procrastinate in when you eat or when you go to sleep, and as we all know, that's not the best for you. So do you happen to know anybody, or maybe yourself, have you ever been in a situation where you've procrastinated it or you've been working too hard on something and at the end of the day it just affected?
Yeah. Well, so this... there's a famous course at Stanford, and it's called Mechatronics. And this thing has a notorious reputation for being the biggest time sink possible. And so, I mean, this thing just takes over your life, and it's one of the biggest personal battles that each student has with procrastination in general. And so it's, you'd go into the lab at around noon, and there would be maybe a quarter of the people there. And then you'd go in there at midnight, and everyone would be there. And so there was like all-nighters, and it's winter courses. During the winter is when it's the worst. And so some of my colleagues are in that class right now. And it's just absolutely brutal. And so I think it's people get on a schedule of they push it later, and then they're just like, oh, I was at lab until 4 o'clock in the morning, so then they wake up late. And then, sleep is important, not only for like maintaining other parts of your health, but also just like maintaining and being able to think well and things. So, absolutely. And it really happens to everyone.
So I'm definitely guilty of all of the above.
Yeah.
I think the message that I'm trying to get across is that stress is inevitable in many situations, and procrastination is something that may be avoided, and it's definitely something that a big percentage of our U.S. population self-identifies with, especially with regards to being a chronic procrastinator. And so today's show is really going to be focusing on acknowledging procrastination, coming up with a definition that is applicable to maybe whoever it is watching at home, and figuring out ways to avoid it. So, funny enough, in the epidemic article that I was reading by Dr. Ferrari, who is the associate director who studies psychology at, we actually have a phone call, so I'll actually get that.
Sure.
First. Welcome to YouthLINE. Hello? You weren't able to get through that.
All right.
Hello? Okay, excited.
Okay.
We had a situation. But yeah, so according to that article that I was reading, Americans tend to procrastinate more than other countries, than people from anywhere else in the world, which is quite strange. And according to the article, the reason was because we put up with it more. So when people have an excuse as to, I had to submit this assignment late because my grandmother died or my dog or some sort of situation, we don't necessarily question it, although we may have an internal weird feeling about it. We're okay with it, and so we allow it to happen. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
All right. Well, so I can't speak to it too much, and most of I've lived in America
your whole life, yeah.
That's most of the culture that I'm aware with, and I've definitely pulled some of my dogs ate my homework before.
Yeah.
But one time it was actually true. Yeah.
So it does, in fact, happen.
Yeah, it did once. But
so for example, so you're currently a mentor, right? And so you have a mentee, and so let's say, hypothetically speaking, the person you're mentoring, do you think that you would maybe say something if you were suspecting that somebody was procrastinating, or do you think you would let it slide and just avoid it?
Yeah, so I've mentored people with different styles before, and I think that it's very person-specific. So they, for some students, or some people that I work with, I feel like they needed kind of someone to keep them in line, but others, they would do fine just on their own. And so I would probably push back a little bit, but not too hard.
Okay.
And maybe that's the American speaking in me, just like the Paul paper, I'm not sure.
Okay, so according to the world's leading expert on procrastination, there are many ways to avoid success in life, but procrastination is definitely one of them. So we've talked a lot about what procrastination is and how we acknowledge it, but how would we avoid procrastination? So I know you had mentioned maybe setting up a schedule where you know that you don't have a computer in front of you or a cell phone in front of you, but what are other sure ways? A lot of people in the past who I've spoke with mentioned keeping a planner, writing a to-do list. Do you have any tools that you have practiced that have helped with procrastination?
So that's actually funny that you said that. So I had a track coach, and he hated to-do lists.
Okay.
And he loved scheduling. So his idea was, put effort into the activity rather than put, stock and importance on actually completing the task necessarily. Just to kind of like a motivation trick. And then it's, if you concentrate on that end of it, it might be a little bit easier. But I mean, I don't know. Like I have no silver bullet, and I think that I'm far from like the world's expert or something like that.
Well, we definitely value your opinion, as you were definitely somebody who is at. Do you
keep a schedule?
I actually do not keep a set schedule. I'm one of those people where I can plan for one thing and I can say that I'm gonna be in lab working on the following material, but as I get an email that requires urgent, something urgent, then I'll like swap and be like, I need to focus on this more than that.
Yeah.
So unfortunately I don't. I wish I was not a procrastinator, but I feel as though I am the world's biggest procrastinator. But some of that may have to be with time management as well. I feel like I kind of am involved in too many little things at once that do play a role. But as the years have gone by, I've come to place higher value on certain aspects of my life than others, and I think that's kind of helped in a way.
Do you have a silver bullet, say?
I don't necessarily have one. I know that I like to surround myself with people that aren't procrastinators, and I feel as though that kind of helps in a weird way because when I'm hanging out with them and I know that they're working on etc., or just seeing them be in the zone makes me feel like I have to be in the zone. But of course, I do study or hang out with people that don't have the same study habits as I do, and so because I'm such a procrastinator, when it comes closer to the time that an assignment's due or something is due, I'll tend to completely tune out. Like, nobody will hear from me, like, people will call me and I will not pick up. Like, I will disappear off the face of the earth. And unless you know me, you would think that I got kidnapped. And so then it's hard for me to surround myself around people who don't share those same habits. But definitely just spending time and being around people who
the Michael Jordan effect, sometimes people call it.
Exactly. Yeah. So definitely I feel as though procrastination is something that affects many of us, and we will be offering a whole list of tools that, for those of you that are watching, may look at home and maybe offer and share their own tips. For those of you that are interested, check out our Facebook page at YouthLINE Live or YouthLINE SF. But in the meanwhile, I think something that we haven't necessarily highlighted is, obviously there may be an obvious answer, but why do people procrastinate? Why do you think, what is the satisfaction that we get out of procrastinating?
Yeah. Well, so I would be interested. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know about like the research in it, but I
like, why have you procrastinated?
It's just part of the human condition to do as little work as possible and still get by. So I think that a lot of people, I guess it's kind of laziness, but it's a good laziness. Like I would even say that we're kind of genetically predisposed to doing the least amount of work while making sure that we're safe and like eating and all that. So I would think that in my mind when I get this, it's always that a push and pull of one thing. It's just like, I want to stay on my couch and like, I don't know, eat tons of cereal and watch Netflix all day. And there's the other part of me which is like, okay, but I should also do work. And I feel like finding the middle ground of that is the challenging part. But there's definitely still some part of me that just wants to watch Netflix all day, and sometimes I do too.
I agree. So there was a poll done on why people procrastinate, and it was interesting to see the responses. And some people actually said they did it for the rush. So the adrenaline junkies out there were like, something about doing something last minute and getting it done successfully is amazing. Other people actually answered with they actually don't procrastinate in all areas of their life, but with regards to school at least, and assignments, the number one thing that people would procrastinate the most with was a paper, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously for some people, certain things are of higher value to them as
Perhaps
others.
It's a paper is like a big thing, right? So you're just like, oh, like how do I even nick away at this? Like I'll just wait until it's
exactly done. And so that actually brings up a good tip that there is that people have been mentioning in the past, is breaking up big things that you have to do into smaller bits and pieces. So let's say you have this enormous paper that was due. You can actually give yourself mini assignments that you can take care of, as opposed to just saying, okay, I have this huge paper due. You could work on, okay, what's my thesis going to be, or what are my supporting points going to be, and what kind of articles am I going to cite. So that's actually been able to help.
Yeah. I remember actually reading an article about that, and there was a sensationally successful application, like an iPhone app, and all you did on it was tap it, and it was called Bitcoin Billionaire. And it's surprisingly motivating because there's little boundaries that you get to, and the goal in it is just make money. And so as you keep on going, it's very unusually, surprisingly satisfying to reach that next level. And so I think that like people are, and I know personally, like little discrete victories, little small ones are worth a lot.
Yeah.
So I try to do that in like my stuff a lot.
That's a fantastic point. I definitely could not agree more.
So maybe that helps people.
For myself, for example, one of my instructors loves giving us a midterm every week, no matter what. And I feel as though I love that because it forces you to be on task, and sometimes just like getting a bunch of passing amazing grades feel better than like freaking out about a couple of big ones here and there. So yeah, we're nearing the end of our show. We've got approximately 20 seconds left. Again, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Nick for coming on to the show and discussing procrastination.
You're very welcome.
So for those of you that are watching at home, feel free to call us at the studio or check us out on Facebook at YouthLINE Live or YouthLine SF. Thanks.